Good afternoon, everyone. We're waiting for a couple more board members to join. We'll wait a couple more minutes before we get started.
Let me let Nancy know that you're in because you might be showing up as an attendee rather than a panel member.
No, I'm in.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. We will go ahead and call this meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. 1.01A. I'm sorry, 1.01B, Pledge of Allegiance. And we have our new superintendent lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, thank you, Board President Duarte. If everybody could please rise. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
liberty
and
and
justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jimenez. 1.01C, roll call.
Mr. Duarte,
I'm
Present.
at a board meeting. Fine.
Dr. Jung,
Here.
Mr. Kwok,
Present.
Mr. De La Torre,
Present.
Mr. Medrano,
Here.
Dr. Jimenez,
Present.
Mrs. Bowie,
Here.
Dr. Fancher,
Here.
Ms. Rojas,
Here.
Thank you, Nancy. 1.01D, review of the agenda, any additions, deletions, or corrections.
For President, we do not have any additions, deletions, or corrections.
Thank you, Dr. Jimenez. 1.02, adoption of the agenda, including additions, deletions, corrections, and adjustments in order of business. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Was that Dr. Chang?
Yes.
Dr. Chang, do I have a
5
second?
seconds.
And
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Kwok? Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Medrano,
Aye.
Mr. De La Torre,
Aye.
Mr. Kwok,
Aye.
Dr. Jung,
Aye.
Mr. Duarte,
Aye. We did not receive 1.03, audience members who wish to speak to items listed under closed session only may address the board at this time. We did not receive any requests via email to speak to closed session items. 1.04, adjourn from public meeting to closed session.
I'll make the motion. Martin makes the motion.
Motion by Mr. Medrano. Is there a second?
Joseph, second.
Dr. Chang is second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Medrano,
Aye.
Mr. De La Torre,
Aye.
Mr. Kwok,
Yes.
Dr. Jung,
Aye.
Mr. Duarte,
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned from public meeting to closed session. Open session will begin at 6 p.m. Thank you. All right, it is 6:10, 1.06, reconvene the public meeting. 1.07, report of actions taken during the closed session. There are none. 1.08, requests to speak to agenda items. We received 15 requests to speak to reopening schools by the close of requests to speak. 2, communications, 2.01A, employee associations. We'll start off with Margaret Caldera.
Anthony, can you come back to me? I have to step away for a minute.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
All right, we will go with Joyce Garcia. If it's not Joyce, Laura Silva. Let's start off with Joyce first.
Okay, Anthony, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, President Duarte, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Jimenez and Cabinet. My name is Joyce Garcia. I'm Chief Steward of SEIU Local 99. I would like to welcome Dr. Jimenez to his first emergency board meeting, and the SEIU looks forward to collaborating and problem solving with you, Dr. Jimenez. Next, I would like to congratulate our brethren union CSEA for their TA with the district. It was a long process, but we are all truly happy for you, your members, and for the district. We have spoken at past board meetings about trust, transparency, and communication. We believe after some dialogue and effort was made, and SEIU acknowledges the district for finally including us in the RISS committee to reopen schools. Naturally, we would have preferred it sooner, but it's better now that our valuable input and the process of the reopening of schools be collaborated together. Although there's still work to be done, we are appreciative of efforts so far. Moving forward, we are pleased to give our input, contribute our expertise and ideas in specific areas, and work together as a team to provide best service and instruction for our students and families. And hold on. Also, sorry. Also, I lost my place. Sorry. Hold on. With that said, this might be a premature, but I would like it on record. I would like us as a whole to start thinking about the recovery model for this district that can be shared with stakeholders. I ask that the board to reevaluate how money is appropriated and expenses expedited and in the best interest of all the students, employees, and stakeholders. The following concerns still remain and continue to weigh heavily on us: job security for different classifications, remote work for specific classifications, safely reopening schools whenever that happens, and again, a recovery plan model with a U-shaped recovery versus an L-shaped recovery. We as a union, we as a district, we as a team must continue to troubleshoot and resolve all concerns together in unity and not at the expense of students and classified positions. Thank you for your consideration and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Joyce. Let's try Margaret Caldera again. See if she came back. Nope, it doesn't look like she's back yet. So we'll go with Mr. Billy Joe Wright with HLPTA.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Board President Anthony Duarte, board members. Welcome, Superintendent Dr. Alfonso Jimenez, Cabinet, and those listening at home. The data coming out is sobering data. 3.4 million cases in the United States, 137,000 deaths, and California and LA County, as well as the surrounding counties, are no better. We cannot reopen schools unless it is safe. The surge in COVID-19 cases have made it clear that this virus remains a threat to our students, our staff, and our community. As educators, we implore everyone to follow the guidance of experts, which is based on science, not opinion. Society failed to follow guidance meant to protect people, which would have allowed us to remain open and return to schools where we would all like to be. The Hacienda La Puente Unified School District should only transition to an on-campus hybrid blended learning model when local public health officials deem it safe and all safety protocols can be met, including personal protective equipment, ventilation systems, and social distancing. I want to make it clear, every educator enters the field of education to work with students, to keep them safe while preparing them to be lifelong learners and helping each individual student reach their potential. We depend on the personal connections we make with students and families to learn the individual needs of each student, which is what makes it possible for us as professionals to protect students by creating safe learning environments and by differentiating instruction so students can learn and soar. We know that. Under normal circumstances, the best place to do this is with face-to-face instruction on campus. Our members are the professionals. We know the challenges ahead, and we know the impact this pandemic has had on our students and our families. HLPTA represents school nurses, psychologists, speech language pathologists, resource specialists, counselors, teachers. But we are members like our community. We have families like our community. Our members are parents with young children, have elderly and immunocompromised family members like our community. And many themselves are considered at high risk. Seeing the surging numbers in our community, especially announced today, the numbers impacting our Latino community and families, we must remain closed and flatten the curve. Educators have done a lot over the years, let's be honest, to ensure students have a safe place to learn. We never should have been expected to pay money out of our own pockets or to jump in front of bullets. We will not allow ourselves or our students' lives to unnecessarily be placed at risk again. So I ask everybody, please support the schools being closed, remaining closed on campus. Join us in providing our kids the best distance learning possible, and help us advocate for funding from the national government by getting these elected officials at the national level to pass the HEROES Act and urge Governor Newsom to endorse Prop 15. I would like to close with one note. Unrelated to COVID, HLPTA recently lost a very important member of our family. We send our condolences and love to the family and friends of our HLPTA site representative, member, teacher from Los Altos High School, and our friend, Shalom Montgomery. We have lost a dedicated teacher and a fierce advocate for students and members. May we all continue and move forward in her honor. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Billy Joe Wright. Can we bring Margaret Caldera, from CSCA?
Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Good evening, school board members, Superintendent, Dr. Jimenez, Cabinet, community members. My name is Margarita Caldera, Chapter President of CSCA Hacienda La Puente, Chapter 115. Hope everyone had a safe 4th of July. For those who do not know what CSCA is, I will briefly explain. CSCA is an acronym for California School Employees Association. The California School Employees Association is the largest classified school employees union in the United States, representing more than 250,000 school support staff throughout California. CSCA members perform a wide range of essential work in our public schools and community colleges, including security, food services, office and clerical work, school maintenance and operation, transportation, academic assistance and paraeducator services, library and media assistance, computer services, and many, many more. CSCA was formed in 1927 when a determined group of Oakland custodians came together to support an elderly custodian who couldn't afford to retire because public schools had no pension plan for such employees. This small group of custodians saw the need to gain rights and benefits for themselves and other school employees and began the organization to achieve this goal. Through this initial determination, CSCA proved to be an organization that would stand the test of time. I wanted to share a little information so that you can understand that the services that CSCA members provide are what have kept the district functioning during this time of closure. I'm happy to announce that CSCA 115 reached a tentative agreement on our contract. It was important to stand firm in protecting our contract and our statutory rights. Thank you, CSCA negotiations team, e-board, members, CSCA labor reps, Heidi Holiday, Margie Espinosa, senior labor rep, Kenny Wilson, and CSCA staff. We look forward to the ratification from members and approval by the school board. CSCA would also like to thank Dr. Jimenez for moving forward with the RISS Rights Committee, which consists of all associations and cabinet. It is a clear step in a positive direction, and the committee has had several meetings to address the reopening of schools in a safe environment for students and employees. The goal is student education at its finest in HLP-USD by providing instruction and resources for all students in a safe environment. There is still much more work that needs to be done before we bring students back to. So CSCA believes that at this time, we ask that you consider distance learning for a safe learning and work environment. I would also like to send our condolences to Shalom Montgomery. She was actually my nephew's favorite teacher at Los Altos High School, and I know it was a tremendous loss to him and for the HLP-USD school district and community. And we also like to send our condolences, thoughts and prayers for the thousands of people that have lost their lives due to COVID and also to their families. And if you give me one more second, I have one more. 1 second. Sorry, give me 1 minute. Almost there, sorry. Have to wait for things to load up. I apologize for the delay. Goodness. I'm having a hard time here. I apologize, everyone. If you just allow me a few more minutes, it should be coming up. With everybody using technology, you think it would be faster. Okay, thank you. I would also like to take this time to address a concern that we have regarding the legal action that the board has taken regarding the sequence of elections. CSCA has sent a letter out to the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurman, and we've also included all the school board member as well as the superintendent, and I'll read it for you at this time. Dear Superintendent Tony Thurman, we write to you as California School Employees Association, CSCA, Hacienda La Puente Chapter 115, with the matter of great concern occurring in Hacienda La Puente Unified School District, impacting our community and the teaching and learning of our students. Our school district has been delaying justice by spending time and money pursuing legal action against the Los Angeles County Office of Education and contesting the California Education Code 5021B. In March 2020, the school board approved moving to by trustee election. However, for the past 4 months, HLP-USD has been trying to circumvent the benefits by trustee elections by denying elections in November 2020 in a trustee area without representation. Not only do the board's legal actions have negative financial impacts during the period of economic insecurity, but they are also fueling tensions and racial divisions in our community. Most recently, on July 10th, Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Mary H. Strobel affirmed the California Education Code and denied the school district's petition to determine their own sequencing of the elections. Despite her 17-page ruling, the district's lawyers are now appealing the judge's decision. This academic year, thanks to the community group Together We Can, Juntos Podemos, concern over equitable school board representation served the district to move from at-large to trustee area elections in accordance with the California Voting Rights Act, CVRA. Board members of HLP-USD voted and approved to comply with the CVRA. For over 50 years, excuse me, since the district was established, all but 3 board members have come from Hacienda Heights. This change to by trustee election ensures that the predominantly working class Latino communities of La Puente and Valinda will have equitable representation on the school board. Since, in accordance with LACO approval in the board selected map in May 2020, the California Education Code 5021B, the community has been working for the immediate implementation of trustee representation in the 2 trustee areas and that lack school board members. Trustee Area 1, Valinda, and Trustee Area 3, La Puente, and parts of Hacienda Heights for the November 2020 election. However, the school board has been adamant in being the sole authority in determining which 2 trustee areas will be up for election in November. The school board is wasting taxpayer dollars by continuing to pursue legal action against LACO and the Los Angeles County Register Recorder Office that would give them the ability to determine trustee area 1 and 4 be placed on the ballot instead of the non-represented trustee area 1 and 3. It is disconcerting that the district stands in blatant disregard of LACO and the California Education Code by supporting elections in trustee area 4 in the eastern Hacienda Heights region. This election sequencing would unduly benefit current board member Gino Kwok. Mr. Kwok lives in that area and his term is up in 2020. This would enable him to run in the same trustee area as current board member Joseph Chang, whose term is in effect until 2022. Thus, trustee area 4, with a long history of continuous representation, would have 2 board members for 2 years, while trustee area 3, with the larger population of students from La Puente's oldest established school community and parts of Hacienda Heights, would have none. This sequencing would prove advantageous to one section of Hacienda Heights at the expense of underrepresented trustee area 3 within parts of Hacienda Heights and the city of La Puente. The negative impacts of this litigation are many. At a time of budget cuts, the wasting of scarce resources on litigation impacts employees, students, and the quality of our schools. Just as important as the district's actions, which unnecessarily have inflamed tension between our communities. Rather than addressing long-standing inequities within the district and working collectively for the greater good, the board members are using the judicial system in their attempt to preserve narrow interests and a position for one school board member. The district actions have pitted our communities against each other. Such actions are not healthy. They do not build on the actual strengths of our community, and they have long-lasting destructive impact on our students' education. We write to you with great hope that you might be able to address this grave situation. The fiscal irresponsibility and the fueling of tensions at this moment in our history is unconscionable. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, and each board member also received that. So I ask that you reconsider the legal action that you're taking and move forth on the sequencing for Area 1 and for Area 3. Good night, everyone, and thank you.
All right, moving on to item 2.01B, audience members who filed requests to speak. We received 15 requests to speak, and it's all on the same subject, so it'll be 1 minute per person. We will begin with my apologies. I was having a little technical difficulty now. So let me get back to this. All right, the first person we received one from is Lorraine Serrano. Please bear with us as staff pulls up the names. There are almost 500 participants on this meeting today. It takes a while.
Hi,
Lorraine.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead and begin.
Okay. Good evening, Dr. Jimenez and board members. I am a parent in the Hacienda La Puente School District. I'm chose to voice my opinion because I'm not in favor of opening 100% online distance education for the high school students. I understand it's appropriate for middle school and elementary, but our high schoolers have different needs, and I think as a parent, we're trying to grow people to become responsible, resourceful, and respectful adults. If we as a community are sincere in our mission to sustain and promote programs of excellence, which contribute to our children achieving high levels of academic success, then the board should be embracing a hybrid model for high school students. I share many of the same concerns for safety and PPE as a labor unions. I myself am a CSEA member in another district. But I really believe that a hybrid model not only speaks to board goal number 6, It provides an opportunity for our young adults to be proactive and responsible for their education. They're old enough to follow social distancing, to wear their masks. It's important for them to be in the classroom, to have their respective voices heard, to have meaningful conversations about world events and the uncertainty we're living in. They
Thank you,
also
Lorraine.
need to
Thank you
engage
for your
with their
comments. That is
peers.
time, Lorraine.
They also
Thank you.
need to engage with their peers and teachers in a safe environment while developing critical thinking skills.
Thank you, Lorraine. That's your time. Thank you. We appreciate the
Thank
call.
you.
Next, we have Elizabeth San Martin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Elizabeth. Go ahead and begin.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your condolences on Shalom Montgomery. I worked with her for 14 years at Los Altos High School. I was under the impression we had 3 minutes, so I'll try to be more brief. The district has taken a long time to make this decision, so I would appreciate it if they would consider, whatever the case is, to push back the date of the start of school. My own children's district made the decision back in May, and they don't start until 2 weeks after us, and they've kept us in communication. We teachers have only had 3 hours of training in the new software Canvas for distance learning, and other school districts have provided much more. Many of us would be willing to go to training and watch videos and learn unpaid. About half of the students and parents would need at least a week of in-person instruction to even understand distance learning at this point. And there are other models like Whittier High Unified that have provided like office hours where people can go in and learn. And unfortunately, simply expressing a personal preference, as our previous speaker did, Ms. Serrano, for hybrid learning is taken as an attempt to force vulnerable people to take risks that they're uncomfortable with, and this is not the case. When we approach hybrid learning, we should make sure that everyone feels that they are not forced into it and always provide the option for distance learning. Please prepare for moving to hybrid learning by matching teachers who prefer to work distance with parents and students who prefer to work at home and distance. Please give the choice. In these unprecedented times, there should be a separate committee from the labor management team and the ad hoc committee that is tasked with developing a hybrid schedule, and they should include parents directly in this decision. And it should be as easy to find that committee as it is to find the Citizens Oversight Bond Committee and make suggestions for them. We need a better system of polls and surveys within the district that can be easily accessed regularly and gives more options than false dichotomy choices. For example, ask what kind of hybrid schedule would you support? What are the priorities for a hybrid schedule? And not simply, do you support hybrid or in-person or distance learning?
That's your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Adriana Quinones. All right. It looks like Adriana's currently not on. We'll hold her off and I'll call her name in the end to see if she logs back on. Next is Gabriela Elias. Okay, doesn't look like Gabriela's currently on. We'll hold her off as well and come back to her. Next is Elki Tapia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please continue.
Thank you. I want to thank the board for holding this meeting today. While I would absolutely love for my children to be able to return to school, I do believe that continuing with distance learning is the right choice at this time for both the students and the staff's safety. That being said, I do hope that the district will be able to provide daily quality distance learning for our children, as it wasn't successful in the spring. And I would expect that teachers would be available daily for the children in their class, just as they would be during regular school. My biggest concern regarding distance learning is how special education will be meeting IEP services and helping those students who require extra support. Distance learning is a lot more difficult for them, and this is not the time to be reducing anyone's services. I would really love to see better communication between the special education department, providers, and parents. This has been a difficult adjustment for everyone, and it is more important than ever that we work together for the benefit of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Dora Luna.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can, Dora. Go ahead and begin.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, superintendent, cabinet, and community members. I am commenting right now on the November ballot. I agree with trustee area number 1 and trustee area number 3 being on the ballot. I do not agree with trustee area number 4 being on the ballot. I remember we had meetings about this and our opinions were asked, and I went to a couple of meetings, and I'm hoping that all the feedback that we gave and the feedback we're giving now is actually being taken into consideration. We do not need to be spending money on court fees. That money could be better spent in so many other ways for our children. Also, I know it's old news, but for me, agreeing to go ahead with the Wedgeworth School and spending, the way I see it, wasting $52 to $70 million on one school, I can't see it as justifiable. My children go to 2 schools here. I grew up in this school district, and I just think I can't justify it. It makes no sense to me. Moving on, when we decide to go back to school, please take into consideration our children. They're the most important thing that we have. They are our future. And like the person before me said, if we do go with distance learning, I pray that the teachers are well prepared, because what happened in the spring was a fiasco. And I hope it does not work that way on this time again. I hope they're much better prepared, much better trained, because what happened in the spring was just unacceptable. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dora. Next, we have Richard Nares. Richard, can you unmute yourself?
Hello? Yes, can you hear me?
There you are, Richard.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes,
Yes, we
sorry,
can.
doctor.
Okay.
So I wanted to say thank you for taking my time and let me speak. Dr. Jimenez, welcome to the district. I know this is unbelievably difficult times to enter a district. The same to the board members. Thank you for taking this time to have this emergency meeting. And that's exactly what it is. I should remind the community that this is an emergency meeting on schools being reopened under a distance learning model. There's a time and place for politics. I think we need to worry about the schools and what's going to happen first before we go into the politics. So thank you for putting the community at large in your minds. Thank you for going beyond politics and considering the lives of your students, your teachers, staff members, and everyone else. I need to remind the community that New York City schools had their schools open under COVID-19, and they lost 74 district employees, 28 paraprofessionals, 30 teachers, 2 food service staffers, 2 administrators, 2 facility staff members, 2 school aides, 2 guidance counselors, 1 parent coordinator. Brooklyn lost 24. Bronx lost 19. Queens lost 14. Manhattan lost 9. Staten Island lost 4. They lost it, all those people in Maine. The June numbers were now out when I printed this article. As one of the only very few Black teachers, and I believe the only teacher in our district to receive congressional recognition for my teaching efforts by Congressman Gil Cisneros, I think I have a responsibility to share my concerns. For parents who are concerned about equity, let's remind you that the school board is making the right decision here. The hybrid model provides for 1 to 2 hours a week for your child to receive direct instruction. We are then required to put our digital learning material online under a hybrid model. There is no way students can learn with only 1 to 2 hours of direct instruction, period. I taught Mount Sac Summer School for the district for summer school under Los Altos, and it worked. We asked questions, and we did what was right. So I praise the district, and I praise the efforts that my union has made to make this safe, sound decision. Let's remember to the public, we have a county right now that is debating of opening schools without masks because they're following a president that follows fake pseudoscience and fake news. Our district is putting the lives of all
Richard,
of us.
that's time.
All of us.
Thank you, Richard. Next, we have Luana Acuna.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead and begin.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to start by welcoming Dr. Jimenez to the district. I'd also like to commend HLPUSD and its employees for quickly mobilizing meal distribution after the closure to ensure families had access to healthy food and for the scholastic book packages for our kids to enjoy over the summer. I'd like to share with you the incredible job our principal at Los Altos Elementary has done since the school closure in March. In addition to posting a variety of educational resources for families, she's engaged with her students through fun online activities. We appreciate her hard work, dedication, and the fine example she sets at HLPUSD. While I'm disappointed that it appears in-person instruction will not be an option for the students that face significant barriers to learning online, I support all decisions that are based on the health and safety of our children and HLPUSD staff. I thank you for acting on this tonight and not waiting until the July 23rd board meeting. The extra time to prepare our families is appreciated. In closing, I ask you to ensure there is consistency in the quality of the distance learning program. The quality of our children's education should not be dependent on the luck of which class they are assigned to. Every student in HLPUSD deserves the best possible experience with distance learning, especially since it may now be their only option. Teachers must be trained, supported, encouraged, and evaluated to ensure the students' and teachers' needs with this new platform are being met. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Luana. Next, we have Maria Orpesa Fujimoto.
Hello.
Hello, Maria. Go ahead and begin.
Okay, just want to make sure you can hear me. So, welcome, Dr. Jimenez, board members. My name is Dr. Maria Oropesa Fujimoto. I teach at Cal State LA. And I am going to request that HLPUSD should only return to a hybrid face-to-face learning if there is sufficient leadership in schools. Valinda School of Academics has been without a principal since COVID-19 began. Our vice principal, Ms. Larios, has done an excellent job, and this is her first year at our school. I know that the teachers have assumed a lot of responsibilities as well and helped. And while we appreciate their hard work, we recognize that it is extremely difficult. Returning to school with a whole bunch of new procedures, training, different protocols requires leadership. Before our school district returns and goes back to face-to-face learning or hybrid or whatever, we need there to be principals in all schools. I also like to say that the district consider starting later so that teachers have sufficient time to have training. I teach at Cal State LA, and we've been having training all summer long. And so just knowing online learning and how the way that I teach face-to-face is different than how I teach online. It's not just a matter of using different tools. It's a matter of changing your pedagogy. So I'll end there and just say, welcome once again, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Maria. Next, we have Diane Ortiz.
Good evening, board members, and welcome, Dr. Jimenez. I work for Sunset OH. It's instructional aid in the special ed department. And I really can't see how the distance learning has benefited any of our students in the special ed. Although we've had good communication with our principal, we haven't heard much from special ed. And I don't know that the hybrid wouldn't be a good idea for our students because it could be split as they had planned and in smaller class sizes. But the students that we have, that they're just being isolated in their homes, and I don't think it's fair to them. But I know you guys have a plan, and I'm sure you'll make the best decision. But just realize that our job description does entail being exposed to various infectious diseases, and that's part of our job, and I'm willing to take that chance for the good of our students. So thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you, Diane. Next, we have Christine Salazar.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead and begin, Christine.
Perfect, thank you. I wanted to go ahead and comment over the drama that's happening right now in the district. As Margaret had shared earlier, on Friday, Judge Strobel made a final ruling over the writ petition where she denied it, and meaning that meant that trustee areas 1 and 3 will be on the ballot. But then within hours, the district, appealed the decision, still fighting to have trustee area 4 on the ballot to protect the current incumbent, and that's Gina Kwok, for re-election. You are not only just putting a strain on not just our voters, but to our families and staff. You would rather spend time and energy and money, countless of money, trying to deny representation to an area instead of focusing on what's most important at this time. And that's the education of our kids and giving direction to our teachers while we face going into distant learning. I urge you all to reconsider, to think about the communities you are supposed to serve, and to halt your efforts and solely focus on what's most important at this time. And that's the education of our kids and safely going back to school. And I do commend you guys having an emergency board meeting today to make that decision. And please vote not to reopen our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Next, we have Jasmine Montez.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Jasmine. Go ahead and begin.
I just wanted to know what the distance learning model would look like. Is it going to be the same for every school? Is there already a plan in place, or do you guys still need to make up that plan? Like, what's the plan gonna look like? Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Next is Manny Duran. All right, Manny Duran is not currently on. We'll come back to him with the others. Next is Margarita Sujono.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Margarita. Go ahead and begin.
Hi, thank you for your time. So I just want to say I really appreciate that you guys come into the terms that the 100% online learning is the best at this moment. I know we were facing the very unprecedented situation. And to all the other parents who prefer that we go into either hybrid or the physical on-site, I can assure you, I have 3 people that I know that got COVID-19, and this is not just a regular flu. And knowing kids, no matter what, even though we put into a situation with the mask and 6 feet apart, I don't think they're gonna have so much social between them and their friends. It will be not gonna, for those people who saying that the kids need social, I understand. However, what kind of social you think they're gonna have if they have to wearing masks all the times and have to only being in school for 2-3 hours and cannot really interact normally with their friends. So I also want everybody to know that as hard as it is for some working parents, unfortunately, we have to deal with the situations and missing certain education. And I'm one of those people who really put education highly. Missing certain education to me is something that can be catching up is much better than having to jeopardize your kids' health. And because once your kids got this COVID-19, this is not going to stop from being recovered only. It will be long-term things that they have to deal for the rest of their life. I know.
Thank you, Margarita. Thank you. That's your time, Margarita. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will go back and see if Gabriela Elias has logged back in. No, no Gabriela. Okay, we'll go back and see if Adriana Quinones logged back in. No, we do not have Adriana on. And then we'll do one final call for Manny Duran. All right, seeing Manny is not logged back in. All right, those are all the requests to speak that were submitted to the district office. We move on to item 3.01, Board of Education, 3.01A, approved to reopen the 2020-2021 school year with online distance learning beginning August 5th through December 18th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Quack moves.
Motion by Mr. Kwok. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Mr. Del Torre?
Yes. Yes.
We have a second by Mr. Del Torre. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up for discussion. I believe Mr. Del Torre had some questions you wanted to ask.
Yeah, I have some questions in regards to state assessments. Will we be able to continue state assessment, example, the SBAC, the OLSAT, the LPAC, and also the district assessments, the IAB?
So LPAC, we still need to continue.
I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah, Dr. Fetcher, I apologize. I actually jumped the gun on that one. I know our superintendent, Dr. Jimenez, has a presentation. So we'll get to the board discussions and comments after the presentation. So I apologize, Dr. I forgot that he had that. So we will go ahead and turn it over to our new superintendent, Dr. Jimenez, to go ahead and begin with his presentation.
Yes, thank you so much, Board President Duarte. And so this being my first meeting, I just want to give a quick, shout out to our community. I know we have a lot of members of our community on this board meeting. And I mean, it's very impressive to have pretty close to 500 members of our community logged in and knowing what's happening in our school district. And I also want to just briefly just also share my condolences for our teacher, Shalom Montgomery, that passed away at Los Altos High. So I just want to make sure I express my condolences, and I know we are supporting the team and the school there. So as we move forward for the item that's before you, to reopen schools with distance learning, I wanted to provide the board and the community an opportunity to just hear a little bit about what is distance learning under this time frame, because there are members of the community who weren't completely pleased with the way distance learning occurred in the spring, and I would include other districts as well in there. In my past experience, the same thing. There were some difficulties with distance learning the way it was rolled out. So I never really called it distance learning. I referenced it as emergency remote learning because that's what it was. It was under an emergency. So moving forward, we want to use this as an opportunity to provide the best innovative instruction so that we prepare our students for the realities of the 21st century that they're in, because there is a lot of remote learning, distance learning that occurs as it is with many of our colleges. So this is a great opportunity as well to provide our students with that experience and to do it right, to do it correctly. So I'll be taking you through this presentation that highlights, some key points with respect to distance learning and some of the new provisions that were provided as part of recently approved Senate Bill 98, which has a lot of those components that will help school district as we launch distance learning. So if I can get the next slide, please. So what is distance learning? And I don't think we need to go into the detail and explain it, but basically it's when the students are getting instruction in a different place where they're not, in a traditional setting as in a physical classroom. And so there are various options as to what is the California Department of Education and the Senate bill, which outlines what is considered distance learning. They're outlined in our Educational Code 43500, which basically talks about an interaction, or instruction, check-ins with teachers and students through a variety of means, whether it's a computer or whether it involves communications technology, whether it's a phone call, whether there are other ways that a teacher could check in, just make sure that students are logging in. And so we do have some technology that does allow us to check whether students are logging in and whether they're completing some of the work. So distance learning would involve all of those types of communication that our students could access, and also the programs that we have available to them so that they could use those platforms to access instruction. This could either be a video or audio instruction. In education, we talk about synchronous instruction or asynchronous instruction. And those are just two fancy educational jargon words to say one is live instruction and one is instruction that may have been recorded at some point that students can access at a later time. So those are both ways that you could have distance learning happening. One of the new provisions of the Senate bill does refer to the use of whether they're using a instructional television. There could be programs, for example, that a teacher may have a student use, through our Canvas platform, where a lesson could be posted that may require a student to access a YouTube video or to access a certain television program that students could access. So that would also count under the distance learning as the state is seeing this at this time. The use of print materials is still part of the provisions that could be incorporated. We also understand that with distance learning, you don't necessarily expect the student to be on the computer 24/7 because they also need time to be able to engage in the projects, to be able to engage in the classwork that they would be involved with. And so print materials are still part of that component when we're talking about distance learning, especially if it's printed materials. We know that our students need that written or oral feedback. So we want to make sure that this is a robust distance learning plan. And so we'll be discussing that in the next slides as well as to what are some of the provisions. So if we can go to the next slide, I just want to provide some context as to how is it that we got here? How did we arrive? You're probably wondering right now, how did we arrive at this decision to go with the distance learning model? And so we've been in consultation, with the superintendent weekly meetings with the LA County Department of Health. They've been meeting with the 80 superintendents through a teleconference, and we've been asking critical questions. We've been asking about safety, and we've been asking about protocols. We've also have had meetings with our Los Angeles County Office of Education superintendents group, where we are asking those same questions. Is it safe to reopen, and what are the counts in the area? So I'm a person that very much relies on data, and I really like to look at the data to make informed decisions. And one of the things that became clear to us and the COVID-19 daily updates that we get from the LA County Department of Health is that the counts are really spiking. They're surging, and we believe that's what led to the governor enacting the closure of various sectors. I don't have them listed there, but you all know which sectors they are in the community. So the question then becomes, if it's not safe for those business sectors, then how would it be safe for our students? And I just want to point out that it's been stated very clearly to us that the LA County Department of Health basically is leaving these decisions up to the local school board to decide whether a school district goes on a distance learning model or a hybrid learning model. But at this point, there is no direction for any school district to really go into a face-to-face instruction because of the counts, the way the counts have risen over the last several weeks that we started seeing right after the 4th of July. And so I have a chart here that I prepared. I've been looking at the data that's been coming in, and I just put the areas there because that piece of data does come to us by city, but it's very tricky with respect to the number of cases and the case rate. So I'm just going to briefly just talk about it. But the case rate basically is a number, and if you look at the LA County Department of Health website, they actually have the number in reference to 100,000 residents. So you're asking, well, how does that make sense in City of Industry where there aren't, 100,000 residents? So they created this format as a way for cities and areas to compare themselves with respect to a case rate or a case count over a rolling 7-day period. And so that's how they look at these averages. So what I did on my own, because I didn't see this in any of their information that they have in their tables, but I took the population of the cities and of the areas that we serve, and I took what the case rate would be, and I multiplied it by the population to get an average of what the rolling count is. So those numbers that you see, the end value there at the bottom, is a comparison of what the counts were just at July 9th, and I started tracking it all the way through July 14th. So if you can see, just in a short time, we've seen the number of cases on a 7-day average increase in just a short period of time. And in information meetings that we have been part of with the LA County Department of Health, they have expressed this very succinctly, that the counts are surging, that the counts are going up. So the local school board obviously has a tremendous responsibility to ensure that we have safety of our students as well as our staff. And when we make these decisions and these recommendations, we want to make sure we make them on solid data. And so therefore, that is how we arrived at this point, that it would be our best recommendation to proceed with instruction with a distance learning model. And so that's kind of how we got to this place. I mean, I know that it's not safe to all of a sudden have many students congregating. And so even in a hybrid model, you would still have a blueprint where the school is partially in attendance for hours, depending upon the grade level. The other piece of factual information that we know with respect to students, and you may say, well, students currently don't get sick as much as the adults do. And that is correct. From the data that we have, some students have been immensely impacted, but the majority of the students, typically 80% is what the numbers tell us of the students, are asymptomatic. But that means that they could be in a school or they could be in a place. And, so there's that concern about whether there would be transmissions that would occur if we were to, come back even in a hybrid model. So at this time, that was the reason why we arrived at this decision. And we've been in communication with our team. Also, you may have heard of the RISE committee and had, some of these conversations about, these models, because if I remember correctly, prior to me getting here, part of the team that was given the charge originally to look at the instructional models involved, the teachers, and they were involved with providing the 3 different models that could be a possibility for instruction. But at this time, this is how we arrived, at this decision to make this recommendation to the board. So I want to go to the next slide to continue further and just provide an overview of what the Senate Bill 98. So Senate Bill 98 is considered the education trailer bill that provides guidance for school reopening for the 2020-2021 school year. So this is basically the educational law that was written that has now been codified into the educational code to provide guidance and to provide the requirements that are needed in order for us to implement distance learning effectively. So what do we know? Well, we do know now that because of the Senate bill, the annual minimum instructional minute requirement has been waived this year. And so this is something that typically happens every year. A school district looks at the number of minutes that are in a school schedule and has to verify that they're meeting the minimum instructional minutes. So that annual total minimum instructional requirements have been waived for this year. And I'll explain a little later in the presentation, why that is the case. The other part of this bill that we do know is that we have to ensure that our students have connectivity and devices. And I know the team has been working really hard, even prior to me getting here, ensuring that students do have access. We have done surveys to know who has access and who needs access. And we reached out with our principals and working with their communities so that we know exactly if there's a student that needs a device or needs connectivity, where we are able to help them. So this bill really specifies that in order to provide a robust educational program, we need to make sure that students have access, because that relates to equity. The other piece here relates to instruction. The expectations that our families and parents can have for instruction is really important. And so the level here of instruction needs to be one that challenges students. And we all know that distance learning and face-to-face instruction is not the same. And so we need to make sure that what we offer to our students is challenging and it's intellectual stimulating, so that when lessons are being designed, they're designed at the highest level of Bloom's. And for those of you not familiar with Bloom's just refers to a level of cognition or understanding, so that when teachers plan their lessons, they're ensuring that they're taking those content standards and teaching it at a level that it was indicated in the standard, because the standard will always tell you what level of cognition or what level of Bloom's taxonomy should a student achieve that standard at. So we want to make sure that that is not watered down, that students are still held to that same level of instruction with the content standards. The next part really goes into supports for our students. And I know there were some questions about that with respect to how are we supporting students that are working below grade level or they need supports. That's another component of this distance learning plan, to ensure that we're reaching out to those students and making sure that they are, logging in, they are part of all of the instruction that's happening with respect to instruction and support provided by the teacher, or if they are involved in some intervention opportunities offered at the school site. The next piece here relates to our students with disabilities. There are students with disabilities, their IEP, their individualized education program does not go away. It's still in effect. But I've always said this from my training and experience with special education, that our students with disabilities are general education students first. So it's really important to ensure they're getting the core, what we consider the core program under a distance learning model. We have to ensure that they have access to the core. Then you layer the additional services as outlined in their IEP. So we want to make sure that our students still have access to getting services, because that's still a major component of the plan. And the next part refers to English language development. We have students that are learning English and we refer to them as English learners. We need to ensure that the lessons that are being planned still account for designated and integrated English language development. And designated just means that there is a specific time when a teacher will either conference with students or check in with students. It could be in various models. Remember what I mentioned earlier about the distance learning plan? That could look in a lot of different ways. It's not going to look the same at every single school, or even within a school grade level. You may have various options the way teachers are integrating designated English language development. The integrated piece of English language development refers to lessons that really ensure that our English learners are being planned, that instruction is being planned for English learners. And so ensuring that they have access to, listening, speaking, reading, and writing components when our students are gaining access to the English language. The last part here is the part that was referenced in the earlier slide related to what is distance learning. And the way the Senate bill refers to it is as daily live interaction. And remember what I said earlier, the interaction could be in various formats. But one thing is clear in this educational code or in the Senate bill is that a certificated employee must ensure that they're the ones providing the interaction. But that's not to say that you could not have other staff support and provide other ways of checking in with the students. And I know we do have instructional assistants that are part of the class, and it also would allow for them to be able to provide that support, but you cannot replace a teacher who needs to be providing the primary support to the classroom. And so part of this also ensures that we are progress monitoring. And I think that was one part that many parents I've heard, and I've read the emails, across the state. And I've heard that parents were upset with respect to some of the checking in. And there are numerous studies that have already been established to show that, there were kids that didn't connect. And so we lost some kids. And I'm speaking broadly here across various districts and across different regions of our state. And so we know as educators, that is an area of concern. We want to make sure we are maintaining constant communication. And the last piece of that daily live interaction is immensely important. It's maintaining school connectedness. We know that students that are connected to schools do better than those students that are not connected. So we want to make sure that those social emotional learning supports are there in the school. They're there so that students who are struggling, who may be going through difficult times, because this is hard. None of us have ever gone through this. And even experienced superintendents have never gone through this. And so we're all in this together. We're going down a very positive road. And I know we can get there working together. Can I please get the next slide? So these specific references within the bill, that refers to the interaction with students. There's a component that talks about ensuring that there's weekly engagement with the students. Well, it's daily engagement, but the monitoring of it. So earlier I talked about progress monitoring. The progress monitoring of it comes through a weekly engagement log. So students who are absent 3 days, basically it triggers a tiered re-engagement strategy by the teacher. So if a student is absent from 60% of the assignments or of the work that needs to be accomplished in a week, that triggers a tiered re-engagement strategy that the teacher needs to work with the parents, work with the students to see what's happening, what's going on here. Why is it that the student hasn't logged in? Or why is it that the student has not done their project? There's got to be a reason, right? And so as educators, we always need to make sure we're finding out what are those reasons, what are those barriers that are prohibiting our students from being successful. So in this section, the intent here was to ensure that we had that progress monitoring, which was a challenge for districts when we were under an emergency remote learning model. So this will really help us, and we'll obviously be working with our principals on this section as to how this is shared with the teachers, and also providing models and supports. We already have a team that's working on the log. And so it's really important that we are ready, not only from doing what's best for students, but also from an accountability piece, because there are audits that will happen to see if districts do have tiered re-engagement strategies that are implemented for students that are absent. And that comes on the next point here with daily attendance documentation. That was something that our legislature wanted to ensure that we were documenting the attendance. And I know some districts documented the attendance across the state and some didn't. And nobody really knew who was on and who was off. So as I mentioned earlier, with respect to the live interaction being in various format, if it's synchronous or asynchronous, there are ways where we could tell within our system whether a student has logged in. So if a student has logged in to an online learning platform, then that would count for part of the asynchronous instruction that a student has checked in, the teacher has checked and monitored that the student logged into the assignment. And so we'll be working with our administrators to help support our teachers so that we are working on this correctly. From meeting with my team, I was told that our district had a head start with that this was something that the district had implemented already with respect to attendance monitoring. And so I think we're in good shape here that this would be a seamless transition. The last piece there, the last component refers to penalties. So you're probably wondering, well, what if you can't implement everything that is referenced in the Senate bill with respect to distance learning? You know, there is a penalty, and the penalties start after September 1st. So if there are areas that we are struggling with implementing, we want to make sure those are corrected. So when we start distance learning on August 5th, we'll start off implementing all of these provisions that are required as part of the Senate bill and now codified in the educational code. But we want to make sure that we are doing this correctly because there are penalties which impact the local control funding formula, which is how we get funded. And so I don't want to make sure that, you know, we don't get any penalties, we don't get any impacts to our budgets, because that is something that we're monitoring as we go to ensure that our budget is healthy moving forward, especially under these unprecedented times. So that is something that we have out there so that everybody knows that, hey, this is different. This is very different from the way it was before. And now there's some of these provisions that I know the parents have actually requested. So a lot of this came through a lot of advocacy that had been happening with some of the parent groups, and they reached out. And so I think this would only make our plan stronger. And so I want to make sure that, you know, we're in line and we are actually ready for any audits that would occur to ensure whether we have met the requirements. Next slide, please. So the next part refers to instructional minutes. So under any instructional model, and notice I did say here on the title slide, any instructional model, whether it's a face-to-face model during this pandemic, whether it's hybrid, whether it's distance learning, all of these models are under now the new instructional minutes guidelines. And so the first point there, every governing board across the state must determine the length of the school day using the minimum instructional minute requirements that are listed there on the slide. And so this, as I mentioned earlier, does include the provisions for distance learning. The instructional minute minimums, you can see them there. There's for TK through second grade, it's 3 hours, and all the way up to 4th through 12th grade is 4 hours, and third grade is just right under the 4-hour minimum. So those are minimum instructional minutes. And I know what I listed there with respect to the length of the school day, that's for the student, but we know that the teacher workday providing core instruction is about 6 hours. And I'm not referring to any time that a teacher spends before or after school that is covered in the collective bargaining agreement. So I'm aware that that dictates that piece. But the part that the board has to weigh in on, and it'll be something we'll bring to the board for the following week, is what is the minimum minutes that the board considers is a full day instructional minutes. Now, under a distance learning model, we know that students cannot sit in front of a computer for 6 hours. It's impossible. It's impossible to expect that. Adults can't even, you know, do that 6 hours straight in front of a Zoom meeting, even though during this pandemic, many of us have been in Zoom meetings back to back. And so we know it's difficult. And learning theory tells us that that is not best practice. And so in a prior presentation that Dr. Fancher gave at the June board meeting, there were some recommended minutes with respect to FaceTime in front of the computer in a Zoom meeting. And so what is going to happen is that each of the districts or the local education agency, and we call that the LEA, they have to determine what those length of the school days are. And the schedules are obviously determined more by the site because that's going to look different in one school versus the other. And it could look different between the different grade level within the school. You may have a model where the students in the primary grades prefer to Zoom at a later time. And there's got to be flexibility with that because we're working to provide the best support for our students. And if we're working to provide the best support and benefit for them, we want to make sure that we do provide that flexibility. So teachers, I know, will be working with their families, with their school administrators as well to set that. But what the district has to do is develop a list of what are some of the equivalents that would be referenced, for everybody across the district. So what I mean by equivalence is that you may have a 3-hour day for a student in second grade. That 3-hour day may involve let's just say a 40-minute Zoom call or a 30-minute Zoom call with the class. It may involve the student doing some projects, right? That they're going to do some kind of a project that the teacher has given them. As a district, we have to quantify what instructional minutes that would equate to with respect to a project, because school districts will get credit for those equivalents to make up the minimum instructional minutes. And so what we're envisioning a distance learning model where if we go with the guidelines that have been set by the Senate bill, we have an opportunity to provide also additional supports for students after that time period. So what do I mean by that? If I am a second grade student and I get 3 hours of quality core work in various formats, because remember what I said about distance learning could take on various formats using technology and various multimedia sources, I have an opportunity to still be involved in any type of intervention support beyond my 3 hours. And so we know that teachers in those cases, they would actually be planning something around that where they could provide some additional intervention. There's opportunities there. So I think what it does is that provides our district some flexibility and provides schools opportunities to provide additional supports. We have students that are at various levels and some are in different places. And so we want to make sure we work with our students no matter where they are at in their educational journey. And so we want to make sure we have those supports for our foster youth, our homeless youth, as I mentioned earlier, our English learners, our students with disabilities, and students that are just not working where they should be at, but we know they'll get there. We know they'll get there. We know English learners, for example, take more years to develop the language. And we know once English learners do with proper support, they're able to, advance and be able to get, that critical core instruction that they need. So for staff here, we would be working to provide, that model where there's flexibility. And so in our next board meeting, we will bring to our board an item where the board would have to come to an agreement and approve what the length of the school day would be. If the board approves the minutes the way they're listed there on the screen, then that's the way the minutes would be for the student. That would be considered a full day. And so as a parent, you're probably looking at this list and say, well, this is really like a minimum day in distance learning. And, that's one way to look at it. But you also have to look at it from a way where it gives flexibility, where students could get additional supports outside of those, 4 hours. And that is something that would be worked out, at the sites, and also us working with our associations with respect to what are some additional opportunities that teachers could have to provide supports to students, outside of that time period. So I want to go to the next slide, please. So where are we going and how are we moving forward? So this slide, captures currently where we're at, right? We're having a model for distance learning. We know that our students who are independent studies, many of them already do an online credit recovery type learning. So they're used to doing distance learning in that format. And so that is the recommendation at this time, so that when we go and launch our distance learning model, we'll be reassessing each month. We'll be monitoring the COVID counts. We'll still be involved in weekly meetings with our superintendent's group. And we'll be looking to see if the counts, are changing. We want to be able to come back to our board in December to make a determination as to what would happen next. And the idea behind coming with a solid date is that it allows us to plan for effective instruction so that we're not going back and forth and in limbo each month. Are we coming back or are we not? Are we coming back or are we not? And I think that really detracts from the learning that needs to happen. We want to ensure that we promise a solid educational program for our students. And I know in working with our associations, everybody's on board, everybody's excited about just being able to move forward and design the best educational model under a distance learning program. So we want to be able to come at that time to the board and using the data to make an informed decision at that time. If at that time, based on the science, based on what we're seeing, and also based on what we're seeing in our area, in our district, and in the communities that we serve, if it's safe to do so, based on what the LA County Department of Public Health is saying, based on the numbers, then at that time we would transition, we would recommend to the board to allow a transition through a hybrid learning model first, so that we ease right into, the protocols. I would hate for us to come back and then all of a sudden we get spikes or we get surges in cases because people are not practicing the proper care, with face coverings and, the hand washing and the social distancing. So we want to make sure at that time, if it is safe to return, we would have a transition plan that we would submit to the board, showing how we would go from a hybrid and therefore being able to slowly come back to face instruction. And so we want to make sure that we have that there. So this chart kind of shows, where we're at, what will be our midpoint check, and what decision is made at that point, and how do we launch January. If I can get the next slide, please. So what are some next steps? So we have some next steps to hold ourselves accountable here for the district. And that is that we are continuing to meet with our Reopening Innovative and Safe Schools Committee. And we pronounce that rise because we will rise from this. We're proactive and we will move forward. But we are putting together a overall plan that the community will be seeing, over the next weeks. Now, since the recommendation at this time is to go in a distance learning model, we have a little bit more time to vet the overall plan that describes all the models, and it also describes what protocols would be in place at a school site should we be able to come back when it's safe. And so it gives us a little bit more time to prepare. So if the board approves tonight, with all of our associations, that we would release to the community, and it'll be translated in Spanish and also Mandarin. And we'll also start our work with our MOUs with our associations, and also working to support our schools with the distance learning plans, because that would be immediate, and that is something that we would be helping them with as they share information with their stakeholders at their schools, the teachers, the classified employees, and the students. And so I just want to share out that, I have a meeting set up where I am going to be meeting, with all of the ASBs in our school district, the high school leaders. I want to find out what they're feeling, what are their needs, what are they going through right now, because you learn a lot from asking the students. And so I'm very a strong supporter of reaching out to our students, because they tell us how it is. Whether we like it or not, they tell us what they're going through. So that'll be happening within the next week or two. And for schools, we are asking them for sharing the information with their students, their parents, and staff. We also want them to hold another community meeting. And we know our schools held one meeting already to talk about the instructional models. But since things have since shifted 180 degrees, we want them to have a follow-up community meeting that actually goes into more of the distance learning model and how would that work at their school site. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think by bringing this to the board in this emergency meeting does give us that additional time that we need to be able to work with our staffs and work with our administrators to finalize site plans for distance learning. And the last point there is we also want to ensure that our administrators and the district is working with our school administrators to ensure that they start planning for what is called a COVID-19 containment, response, and control plan that the LA County Department of Health rolled out this week. So they actually shared a checklist that districts could use to be able to determine whether a school is safe to reopen. So we would be working with our administrators, and we would ask that our administrators work with their site teams to be able to look at those protocols and ask, are we ready if we were to reopen, at that time in January? or let's just say we do get a vaccine and we're able to take the vaccine a lot earlier than later, and we have like a complete turnaround with this, would the site be ready? And so I think this gives us a gift of time and being able to get ready with the protocols for the site. And so we're working with our schools on that so that they have a plan. And that is a follow-up that we'll be having with our schools. So if I can get the next slide, please. So that takes me to the last slide. And I know some of our board members have questions, but as an executive cabinet, as your superintendent, I am recommending at this time for the safety of our students that we launch the year under a distance learning model and continue to monitor the COVID-19 cases so that at the appropriate time, we could consider whether we start transitioning to a hybrid model. So at this time, we are asking for the board's approval to move forward with distance learning through December 18th. So that is my presentation, Board President. So I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jimenez. So I will now turn it back to Mr. Del Torre for his question. So Mr. Del Torre, I'll let you lead off.
Dr. Jimenez, you answered most of my questions. I do have a couple more. The one that was in regards to state testing. Will we continue to do state assessments, example, the SBAC, the OLSAT, the LPAC, and their district assessments, AAD?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. I am going to ask our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Dr. Judy Fancher, if you could please take on that question.
Thank you. At this point, Mr. De La Torre, we do not have any specific direction about the spring and the SBAC and the LPAC for the spring. The spring is when the summative LPAC is given. What we do know right now is that the dashboard is not going to be released in December. So basically the districts are held harmless because we were released from doing the SBAC in the spring of 2020. We are continuing with, assessing our initial, students who come to us, English learners, and also we'll be doing continuing some one-on-one, assessments of our English learners in the fall. We'll have to look at how that looks now that we have distance learning in place, if that is in place after tonight. But at this point, we do not have clear direction on the SBAC. We will still have IABs available for schools to use. We will also have our local assessments, our district interim assessments, but we are probably going to adjust a little bit what they are and have them come directly from our core materials so that it's a little more streamlined for people to use in this, distance learning environment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My next question is, will students be receiving grades? Or is it going to be passed or credit, or how is that going to work out, especially in high school?
Dr. Fancher?
Go ahead. Okay. Yes, grades, just like summer school. Summer school and middle school math enrichment were wonderful testing grounds for us. Grades count, attendance count, all of that. And we saw in the summer that when the grades and attendance counted, the students showed up, they did well. And in fact, we had the lowest dropout rates from summer school that we've ever had with our online. So, so when the grades matter and when the attendance matters, the students stepped up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, can I ask a few questions? Anthony, can I ask you some questions? Hello?
Dr. Duarte, are you there?
Okay.
Go ahead, Dr. Chang.
Let me start. And according to those the state this relaxed those regulations about the class, and I wonder, whether we can also relax the class size, mainly because it is a distance learning. So we can relax this size, then our high school students can cross the district to take the courses they wish to take, and whether this is a possibility or not. And then the second one is because of this special situation, we may need to do some reassignment of teachers teaching in different subject area. And is there an emergency credential, or is any, do we still need to have that the credentials requirement so that teacher can only teach their subject area? Do we have any flexibility reassign the teachers to teach different courses? This is my question. And another one is because we use a distant learning, then curriculum and the instruction material may be changed. Well, this because the instruction material, I think we already bought it. So, well, if we change to distant learning, we might have short of this instruction material. Then this winning settlement report, will that still apply? If that apply, then we have to buy online material for our students. Is that correct?
All right, Dr. Chang. Dr. Chang, thank you for your questions. We'll try to take them as we go. And then if there's a question that I can have somebody from my team assign, I will ask them to answer that question. So the first question was, could we relax the class sizes? And I know that particular one, obviously the class sizes are set. What we currently have, if I'm not mistaken, in our collective bargaining agreement, there's already some class sizes that are outlined there. And so, that would be something that we would have to have further discussions with our associations. But given a distance learning model, I don't know why we would need to reduce any class sizes, because students are learning virtually. So they're not in school. What I would say is that if we transition halfway through the year and this whole virus is gone in January and we start looking at hybrid learning, then under that model, under a hybrid learning model, the class sizes have to be reduced. And that's the reason why you have a model where students come onto campus on different days, because you would still have to implement the social distancing and have the lower class size within the classroom. I don't know if anybody else on my team wants to provide any additional information. I don't know if Ms. Rojas, are you on with respect to class sizes? Is that pretty much right on with the collective bargaining agreement?
Yeah, that is correct.
All right.
That is right.
So my question is, this distant learning an open opportunity for high school students to take courses in other high school. And
yes.
Is that possible?
Yes, I think that it is possible, provided that the site doesn't have a course. Now, if we're talking about within the district, I know we can look at that to see what are the possibilities if there is space. Obviously, I've done programs like that where a student attends one high school and their school doesn't have the course, and we've allowed some flexibility for students to take another course, but it needs to be done in conjunction with the counseling team, because we want to make sure that they do get credit. And I know you didn't ask this question, but if it relates to an opportunity for a student taking a dual enrollment course with a community college, then as long as we have an agreement with that community college, and in this case, I know we partner with Mount SAC, then it would be allowable, provided that we have an agreement in place for students to earn dual credit. So I agree with you, Dr. Chang, that this is an amazing opportunity to provide some flexibility to increase course access for our students so that they have a broad access of courses. And if there's a course that is not offered at their site for whatever reason, and that is something that, we'll be doing, we'll be working with the team. One of the things that I like to do with respect to the high school programming is that I like to run the high school master schedule on my own. I run the high school master schedule and I look to see what courses are being offered. And, I do ask critical questions as to why is this course not being offered at your campus? So we'll be taking a deep dive at that as well to see what kind of course offerings are offered throughout the district in our high school. And so, Dr. Fancher, is there anything else with that specific question you'd like to add? Because I know you've been working with the team on that.
No, I think you've, the only thing I would add is that, again, in summer, what we saw was students were more willing to take classes at the other high schools that weren't being offered at their high school in summer because it was online. So, so we did have that. And the high school principals, I think, have already been thinking about the fact that some of them, they might have small AP classes, that it might be a good time to combine some of those if it helps us to, you know, serve some need other places. So some opportunities for things that we haven't been able to do in a standard model.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Fancher. And the next question, Dr. Chang, you had asked about the reassignment.
Really quick, Dr. Jimenez, before you
Yes.
move on to the next question, can we make sure that's part of the independent study plan that's presented to the board next week on how that looks and how that can happen? Because I think Dr. Chang is making a good point. You know, we do know that not every school has the same AP classes. And so having this new opportunity where students from all of the high schools can take an AP course that's not offered at their high school now virtually from another high school. We want to make sure we get that, because I don't even know if that's even possible now, because I think, you know, I don't even know when they pick their classes, but maybe now if they know it's possible, they can change something now working with their counselors and their homeschool sites. So you know, I think this is an exciting time for that. So we can make sure that that's part of the plan.
Yes, we will do that. We will add that in part of the plan. Board President, could we go on to the next question, or is that okay? I think he's muted. All right, so let's go to the next question, which was a reassignment of teachers to teach different courses. Ms. Rojas, could you take on that question, please?
I can. So there has not been any relaxing of the guidelines in regard to credentials. If you're going to teach in a particular subject area, you are to be credentialed in that area. So the guidelines are the same. But there are some flexibility that's always been available. Some ways that you can deem that someone has subject matter competency in certain areas, even if they don't hold, say, a full credential. And it gets a little more complicated, so I don't want to take the time now. But generally speaking, the guidelines have not been relaxed, and you still have to have the credential for the area that you're going to teach.
Thank you, Ms. Rojas. And I know there was a follow-up question with respect to emergency credentials as well. Can you address these emergency credentials, please?
I can. We do not any longer have emergency credentials. We have had those in the past, but there are some things that we do have. If we were to have, say, a shortage of teachers, then you can look at internship credentials. There's other ways that you can hire someone while they are earning their credential, but they don't have per se emergency credentials any longer.
Okay, thank you. And the final question that we had for this part was the instructional materials. Why might we be short on instructional materials if we do distance learning? And the other follow-up to that was, does Williams compliance still apply? So Dr. Fancher, you want to take that on?
Sure. We are not allowed to be short on instructional materials. It is against the law. And the Williams law is in full effect. We were made aware of that. And we have been discussing that in cabinet and in the instructional division and with the principals as well, and in our RISE committee. So, and we've actually, you know, all of our online platforms are available. Every one of our new adoptions do have online components with them. And then we'll be making some recommendations to the board on a few other online platforms that will also assist some of our specialized groups.
All right, thank you, Dr. Fancher.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Very good. Very good.
Hey, Dr. Fancher, let me ask you this. In terms of the, you're absolutely correct in terms of instructional materials. That's an area of Williams grounds for a complaint. What about now that we are transitioning to a distance learning model? What about the prospect of getting an online textbook?
Dr.
So,
Fancher?
Yeah, our textbooks actually already have online textbooks. Every one of our new adoptions, they have, the students can access, in fact, the entire book online. Some of them have, QR codes and things like that, but there are enrichment, there's intervention, all kinds of resources that came with our textbooks. You know that this district always buys the Cadillac model of any adoption we do. And so I think this is a time that people will find out that we have resources that they didn't even know we had. So I'm confident that we have a very rich online component.
Precisely. I remember when we went through this and how we had all our curriculum committees and textbook committees and looking at all this, and they did a really a exemplary job on this. And we already had envisioned going to this type, maybe not to this extent, but having a online capability in order to bring that level of education equity to our school district. That's why I think it really is time. You know how they say that necessity is the mother of invention. The fact that we can go ahead and deal with dual enrollment, deal with AP, in order to have that equity, of course, access to others, which is, to me, is a watershed moment that we can use here to make our instruction better. And the other part about that I did want to ask is, at CSBA, we follow all of these developments, and we see how the Cal State system decided they're going to go all online, right? They did that one very quickly. And then USC originally said they're going to have them come back, but then went to an online model. And of course, we have community colleges. Because it is an online model, and we want to engage in absolutely the best practices for all, is there any way that we can look and, in essence, model what these universities are doing in terms of the online distance learning experience? I think in this situation, it's more of a one-to-one where we can actually go ahead and do that. And I'm actually very excited that we can elevate our level of instruction. And I would tell you, Dr. Jimenez is absolutely right. When we first did this, it was more of an emergency situation. Now it's different. And at the very beginning, the parents and kids that I was talking to really didn't think that much about this, because remember, we were only going to be gone until right after spring break, right? So in their mind, it was always going to be temporary. Nobody thought it was going to be for the rest of the school year. But now it's different. And now once they realize that, and Dr. Fancher, it was borne out by what you said about summer school, and you know how much you and I talked about summer school. The kids, I can see, are really embracing this. This is a technology-oriented generation. So I'm bullish on this, because I think our teachers are phenomenal. I think our staff are phenomenal. I think our leadership is phenomenal. I think our administrators are equally so. So I can see this. I can see that this is paving a way to a great future, not treading water, but making it better from an educational standpoint across our entire school district.
Yes, if I may answer the first part of the question, Mr. Kwok, you mentioned whether we could look at what universities are doing with respect to their online learning platforms. So I am pleased to say that, we are moving forward with Canvas, and those of you who've used Canvas before, it is used in most UCs. Some of the Cal States use it as well as their online learning management system, and a lot of the community colleges use it as well. So we are actually preparing our students to be able to be very proficient, if not an expert, in using Canvas once they go through our distance learning program, so that they will be ready. And we are looking for any of those opportunities that are out there with respect to training. I know I shared some information with our team about some free training right now that's being offered at Stanford University for teachers, free of charge, on how to set up your classroom for online learning. So we'll be working with our team on that component with respect to modeling our program so that it is the best. And, we expect excellence. And I think right now we have really good momentum going with all of our associations and our teachers, our classified staff, and just everybody, coming on board. And I want to make sure that what we plan And that's the reason why it was really important for us to set a date for a benchmark date to say, let us move forward with distance learning and give us this time to really do it right. And so I'm looking forward to really seeing the positive impacts and the results, and having our teachers use Canvas. And, I've used Canvas before, but I actually like Google Classroom. I mean, that's just me, because I think it's easier, and I like to integrate a lot of the Google Classroom features. But our students can learn. They can learn many things, and I think this is a really great opportunity to really close the equity divide with respect to access. Course, we talked about course access with respect to the digital divide, and really provide that opportunity so that our students are engaged. There are students that learn in different ways, and we don't have to go on and on, but we know that students learn differently. And I'm very pleased and happy to hear the report. I hadn't heard it earlier with respect to the number of students that were successful through the summer learning program. And so I would venture to say we are going to see that, because we're engaging students in different ways. So we will ensure that we are looking at all models that are offered out there at the college system. But I can tell you, they're using Canvas, we're using Canvas. It's not going to be anything too different, but ours will be better. So I just put it that way. Ours will be better because our students are innovators, and they're going to be helping drive that, as well as our teachers. Our teachers are innovators as well. And so with proper training and support, and we'll be having ongoing training and support for them, we know that they'll rise to the occasion. And I know they're on board to do it the right way. And that's what we expect. We expect excellence, and we expect the best for our students. And so, thank you, Mr. Kwok, for the question.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Del Torre.
Yes, this question is either to Superintendent Dr. Jimenez, or maybe Director Thomas Tan. I don't know if he's available. But if parents or students are still in need of technology, at this point, will they need to contact the district or the school site in order to receive that?
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. De La Torre. I know I've had discussions with my team, and I know Dr. Fancher has the answer to it, because her and I had a conversation about it. And so if you can go ahead and take the question, Dr. Fancher.
Yeah, and Dr. Tan is obviously part of the team, as is a lot of everybody, but we did send out just recently a fall survey, is what we're calling it, and we are contacting all the families that we have not heard from. Either they didn't need a device in the spring, or they just didn't fill out the survey. So these surveys are actually going directly to their email, and principals are following up. We've already had 2,000 responses since we sent out the fall survey. And so we are working on that, and we are deploying devices with the goal of getting as many as possible into the hands of kids on the start of school, and also some hotspots. So yes, we are working on that. And then the principals go through person by person to make sure that they've made contact. And the parents who we don't have good emails, or we don't have an email, which actually we only have about 500 families that we don't have good emails for, the principals are reaching out personally, or someone in the office is reaching out to them to see what their needs are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, is there any further discussion from any of the board members? Any other questions? I do have one question before we take a vote. So I know at some of the parent meetings and some of the discussions we've been having, we were looking at 3 options: hybrid, distance learning, and independent study. Obviously, we're not going, depending on what the vote goes, into a hybrid mode. But if the way this is worded, I'm curious, is independent study still an option for those families who want to take advantage of that option, even though we are may go into online distance learning by this vote?
Yes, that is correct. Our students that are part of our alternative ed programs, those students that are doing credit recovery, they are already familiar with doing that. And as part of that vote, independent studies is still part of the distance learning model. And so it's just a little different. That model looks a little different versus a a distance learning model. And Dr. Fancher, you had shared that earlier in the presentation. Do you want to expand on that piece?
Yeah, and really quick before Dr. Fancher jumps in, because what was being discussed looked different than just the alternative. We were expanding to TK to 12 as independent study. So Dr. Fancher, I'll let you go ahead and go.
Yeah, that is correct. We are still keeping that in place because we're most families will opt for the the distance learning because that's what we're doing, and they're going to have more time with their teachers. But there are situations where families need extreme flexibility, and depending on what the parents do as jobs, like we have one family, I believe one is a firefighter and the other one is a nurse, and so they need some extreme flexibility. So that might be a case where it's better for them to collect a week's worth of homework, have a short meeting with the teacher, and then the student is working a lot more independently with their families. So although we don't anticipate that because we're going full distance learning, there will be that many who opt for that, we did have in our, it was a pulse survey, so we're just getting big data, but there were about 300 people that had an interest in it. But we would assume that if we go full distance learning after the vote, that there would be fewer people who'd be interested in that.
Well, and the only reason I bring it up is I looked at my niece as an example when we went to emergency learning in the spring, and the fights that her mother had with my niece of, you need to log on, your teacher set the time, and crying and screaming and fighting, and she goes through these mood swings. But then, in the afternoon, she's fine. She's like, okay, I'll do my homework now. And so being able to give, some of those parents who've had challenges with their kids at home, who, it's time for you to log on for your classroom time with your teacher, and it's war breaks out at home. So it's, okay, you're wanting to sit down now and do your work. So here's your packet. Here's today's homework. I'm going to help you through that, because I know for a lot of families out there, not just for my own personal experience with our family, but for a lot of families out there, it was a challenge to get kids to log in every morning or, whenever they had to log in. And so we want to make sure that families know that that's still an option. It's not, to me, it's not the best option. I think I want that, one-on-one instruction and classroom instruction with a distance learning that brings. But I also know some of the challenges that families had trying to get their kids to log in at required times. And if it works a little bit better for them to do it when it works for their child, and when their child is a little bit more cooperative, then we also want to make sure that the parents know that that's an option.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, Dr. Jimenez and Dr. Fancher. I believe that at some point during the when we did the spring, that some of our very dedicated teachers had office hours, and I thought that was a great idea. To have that interaction there that was possible. Are we going to be able to have something like that in the full-blown distance learning model as we go forward?
Yes, I would say it depends. And the reason why I'm saying it depends, because the board has to take a vote as to whether you consider the length of a school day for a student. So I think that's the tricky part right there. And I think that's what I said earlier, that if we approve, or if the board approves the model where the 4 hours for 4th and 12th grade, the 3 hours a second, or TK to second, that provides additional flexibility to have our principals work with their teachers. And, obviously we would work with the associations as well on that, because that'd be something that we would want to make sure that is considered a best practice that teachers would have. But I know within their schedule, if we are saying that students need to be engaged in school for a longer day than what the minimums are as outlined by the Senate bill, and that may not leave them any time to be able to incorporate that into their schedule. So I think it would be something that we would have conversations with our teachers association to kind of bounce off ideas as to what can we do, because I know there's also teachers that would want to offer an intervention time to be able to connect with those students who aren't logging in. And so I do agree, that I do like the office hours concept, because it almost seems like it's very collegial, where a student looks, oh, wow, my teacher has office hours here. Well, let me check in. And I know in my previous place, we had schools that had actually the office hours online, and students knew at what time they could just go in because the teacher was in a virtual meeting room that was always open, so students in the class could always go there. So I do like that concept. I mean, I think it'll be something that we'll discuss further with the team, and as we go forward with this, it'll be something that we'll have to work on with our teachers as well. So, Dr. Fancher, any other thoughts on that with the office hours?
I think we can move on because that will be part of the presentation for the plan that's introduced next week. Are there any other discussions or questions before we take a vote? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Medrano?
Aye.
Mr. De La Torre?
Aye.
Mr. Kwok?
Aye.
Dr. Jung?
Aye.
Mr. Duarte?
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Forward, Board of Education comments. Mr. Medrano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to quickly thank all of the staff for working so hard on this plan. I really want to commend our superintendent and welcome him formally to his first board meeting. Thank you so much for being here. Again, we're so excited to have you help lead us through what is a historically difficult time for not just our school district, but the community. I want to quickly touch on a loss that's hit our community really hard. Miss Shalom Montgomery, although I didn't have her as a teacher myself, countless of my friends did. I can't tell you the amount of text messages or phone calls that I received when word got out that she had passed. So many of them have countless stories about how she kept in contact with them through the years after they left her class. And I think that said a lot about who she was as a person. I know she cared about her job. I know that a lot of our teachers at Los Altos are grieving, especially my former English teacher, Ms. Nicole Myler. And I just want to express my most heartfelt condolences to them, and of course, Ms. Montgomery's family. For those of you who don't know, she had a son, Kundai, who was young when I was in high school, but I think he's probably about 21, 22 years old nowadays, if my math is correctly. And I especially want to express my condolences to him who lost a mother. So thank you everyone for joining tonight. We had a really large group of participants. Thanks for, again, to the cabinet staff for their leadership and for the bargaining units. I'm glad we have approved to go on to online distance learning. Thanks everyone for joining. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Medrano. Mr. Del Torre.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, Dr. Jimenez, to your first official board meeting. Great job with the detailed explanation for our upcoming distance learning model. Did a good job. This week, as it was mentioned, we received the heartbreaking news of the passing of Dr. Ms. Shalom Montgomery. We can speak firsthand of Miss Monty, as she was called by her students, because our children were blessed to have her as a teacher. She was a passionate, motivating, dedicated, and truly inspirational educator with a contagious laugh. She held high expectations for all of our students, encouraging them to push beyond their limits. She inspired them to speak up for what is right in the eyes of equity and justice. She is an irreplaceable pillar of Los Altos High School. She will truly be missed and never forgotten. Our deepest condolences and prayers go out to her family, her son especially, and all that were blessed enough to know her. Thank you, Ms. Monty. Next, please know that the well-being and safety of our students and staff is the utmost concern, especially during these times. With that being said, it is absolutely important that our students continue with the rigorous and engaging instruction. We had over 500 participants in this meeting and over 1,000 on YouTube. It's amazing. Just know everything that we do is in the best interest of our students. Stay safe, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Del Torre. Mr. Kwok.
Thank you, Mr. Duarte. So, Ms. Jimenez, I don't know if you ever heard this, that the best way to begin a superintendent's tenure is through an emergency board meeting. And so you have met that here in my privileged time here on the board. There've only been 2 times we've had an emergency board meeting. Once in order to close our schools, and now once to deal with the reopening of our schools. So our staff, our teachers, our classified, our administrators, they're second to none, and they've worked so hard, for this. And I can't say more than it for being RISE and how everybody has come together to go ahead and do this. So I think it's wonderful. I'm very pleased to see everybody involved here in terms of such a seminal issue with all of our participants and what they've thought and so forth. It is really, truly a blessing to see that level of engagement. And it is, nothing is more important than the health and safety of our children. And the governor, oftentimes he says that he looks at 2 numbers when he first looks up in the morning. He looks at the numbers of ICU patients, and he looks at the number of overall hospitalizations. And this is something that the very outstanding president of Teachers Union was talking about, the sobering data. But we take this, but we know that we can always make the best out of a difficult situation. And I can see that we are doing that. And SEIU's call for unity is something that is very much needed at this time. And I've looked at the other school districts that have gone this way. And one item that we haven't spoken about that I do want to just briefly address is the issue of keeping our kids safe once we do reopen through the amount of money that would cost for possible testing and contact tracing. So these are some things that I'm sure that we will address down the line. I'm very bullish on our distance learning model just because of the ad hoc committee and our HLP LMT that are working on this thing. When we're talking about how we can model this per the university experience that now is going on to that. And the fact that we're doing Canvas, I think is absolutely extraordinary, because isn't that what it's all about, is making sure that our kids are going to be college career ready, when the time comes. So if they've seen this, then they've already seen it. And I'm very pleased that Dr. Fancher talked about how we always buy the Cadillacs of textbooks. So I'm not sure if it's really the Cadillacs now or the Tesla of textbooks now, but regardless, the idea is the same, that we always do what we can in order to get the best of the best for our kids. So I just wanted to go ahead and emphasize that that's what we've done, because we knew that, maybe one day like this would happen. It's here, but we're really in a good place to do that. Whenever I walk in our community, because now that's what I do, I walk in our community, I do speak to parents and so forth. So I'm very, very pleased to hear that we're going to be reaching out to those parents that did not request a device or Wi-Fi. I think that really shows what we are as a school district and our commitment to everyone, that we don't take the easy way out, that we do the right thing. I think that's a great idea. I actually have some addresses of some of our parents who did not ask for one, but now would like to have one. I like the office hours, aspect of it that I mentioned before, because if there's one thing about our teachers, they love to interact with our kids. And by having the office hours, it allows at least some level of normalcy. I understand it's virtual, but still. And I know on the other side, our kids love it. You know, when they leave our school district, they never truly leave, but when their tenures are gone, they remember that teacher that they were able to talk to for any reason under that time. I would like to add my great pleasure at the tentative agreement with CSEA. I think it's wonderful. I also am very pleased that from what I hear, our classifieds are willing to do whatever they can to go ahead and help our kids, and, you know, under these different and difficult circumstances. So very, very pleased to hear about that. We should all join together right now in a spirit of unity, because the only thing that matters are our kids and their welfare. And embrace the positivity, eliminate everything else. And that's what we're all about. And that's what makes, as our teacher president has often said, the greatest school district here, which is Hacienda La Puente. I also want to express my condolences about the passing of Ms. Shalom Montgomery. You know, when we say we're a family, we are family. I feel the loss immensely. And she is someone that truly dedicated her entire professional life to the betterment of our kids. And condolences to her, her family, and the Teachers Association, and all the colleagues and all the students and parents that she touched throughout her wonderful life of teaching. And I would respectfully request that we have a moment of silence at the end of this meeting in honor of her great life and what she did to make things better for everyone that she ever touched as a teacher at Los Altos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kwok. Dr. Chang.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I want to thank the audience members participate in this meeting, and I'm so happy to see so many parents and the community people attended tonight's meeting. We have about 500, almost close to 500 people on this meeting, and the reason is this one. I always mentioned that before, several times before, that our teachers, our students in education is the most important things for us to do. And their education, every minute count, because everything in the school, that's the only opportunity maybe in their life they can learn and learn well. And so tonight, so many public join this meeting, shows that our community support this idea, also support our school district, that we are dedicated to teach their kids, and we are very serious about educating their kids, and every single minute counts. And also, because this distant learning is something new. Traditionally, we have this in-class education for almost 50 years, and we improved every year, and even to today, we still have people complain about not the perfection. And this summer, we have opportunity to start to switch to the distant learning, and you expect this distant learning to be perfect. That is almost impossible. I'm very happy and encouraged by our staff and our leaders, and in taking all the different criticism, but they still work really hard and try to make this one work. And I believe we have done our best. And when school start, we are in a good hand, and may not be the best, but we have done everything possible we can. As everybody have seen this Dr. Jimenez presentation, that is a well thought plan. And when we started this learning, I think our success rate is definitely well past 80%. And another thing is very exciting is these changes, and the changes to this distant learning. In a sense, people still have some doubt about the benefit of this distant learning. And because of this changes to distant learning, I finally, found the answers to my questions several years ago. I think about 10 or 20 years ago when we started to have a computer and we have the information explosion. So in the 21st century, the students, they have so much to learn, more than they can able to learn. And same thing, the school, district, teachers, they have the much more material want to give to students than ever before. And this is this 21st century students or 21st century's life. Yeah, everybody have to learn a lot of things. Everybody have to memorize so many things. Almost like everybody have to try to beat the computer. And then how can we teach our students so many things in such a short period of time and help them to memorize it? So I just keep asking myself, and also, look at our education system changes. All of a sudden, right now we starting to have this distant learning, and the distant learning has a concept is that the teachers and put all the curriculums online. And the students have to spend lots of times to prepare this course. In other words, students have to read ahead of time. And when the time comes, the teacher just check the students, the understanding of the material. And this the concept we're talking about in the education field is called the inverse classroom. That means the student have to read themselves. They can read the material the teacher has prepared for them. Then they come to school face to face with teachers, and let the teachers start some project or some work and check their understanding. And this is exactly what the hybrid system is going to be. And right now, the distance learning, and we have to train students. They have to spend lots of time to read those materials our teachers prepared for them. And then in the future, then when we start the hybrid system, then that is exactly the model we have in the reverse classroom. So we can say this is the time of the revolution of instruction. And because of that one, and we also needed to make some adjustment, and also we have to do some preparation work. The one thing I think we are short of that one is that somehow, in learning in the future, the student must learn themselves or read themselves at home, and they have to be motivated, to do those things by themselves. So it will be our current, maybe the administrator or maybe the superintendent, you have to arrange it in some way is to help the student understand the importance of learning so that they were motivated to learn. And I so far, I'm on the board for so many years. I haven't heard any administrators or any superintendent spend time to have this program to motivate the student to learn. But this will become necessary in the distance learning and also in the hybrid system. Students must be able to read by themselves. When they attend the class, they should discipline themselves, know the importance of learning, and they will not disturb the class. And this one used to be, if it's face-to-face in the classroom, teachers spend so much time in controlling the classroom. But right now, if we start the distance learning, there's no way we can control the classroom except if we motivate the student, if we tell the student the importance of learning, and that will help them just like the college students, they are so dedicated in learning because they, why they spend time and money go to college. And same thing here, our public education system is free, but this is not free. They spend a lot on valuable time to learn, and they should not waste their valuable time in learning. And also because of this distant learning, and there are so many things involved in here to do the adjustment, and also, and because this is the first time, and we are facing this pandemic, this crisis, and there are so many things we may not know right now what kind of dangers ahead of us, but we do need to have some kind of preparation. In other words, we have to make somebody have to think that what can go wrong on this path, and until we are completely recovered from the pandemic in here. So during this period of time, and all the staff and teachers and everybody should have this kind of facing this pandemic crisis training, because even though we have the procedures completely, and we all know that if a procedure you are not 100% understand, you want to make a mistake, and this pandemic crisis, the mistake is not a simple matter. It can cost life. So we have to start to think about it, what could go wrong, and we should provide a certain kind of training so that the people, staff, and everybody are well prepared for this incident to happen, and we know how to handle it, and to mitigate the risk or the danger to the minimum. Okay, once again, Dr. Jimenez, this is your first meeting. You have done a wonderful job. You're a very calm person. Real nice, you did a good job. And also, I'm so happy to see the staffs, and Annie, JR, and Dr. Fincher. And I know you have been working so hard. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. I want to reiterate all of my colleagues' comments. Welcome, Dr. Jimenez, as our new superintendent of Hacienda La Puente Unified School District. We are very excited to have you. I thought your first board meeting was going to be next week on July 23rd. But obviously, taking a new position during a pandemic has changed all that. It's changed everything. So, they always say trial by fire. And so welcome to your first board meeting for Hacienda La Puente. Today, I think today was a very difficult vote. Our staff and all the committees have been working really hard on figuring out how we can reopen schools in person for several weeks now, if we could, but two things happened this week. The first was we've seen the most hospitalizations in LA County since yesterday, since this pandemic started. And we've also seen the most number of cases in LA County, which was over 4,000 cases since this pandemic started. Both those indicators were way higher than when we closed down schools in March. The most in LA County just this week. And so as difficult as this is, we had to make this tough decision to go to distance learning for the fall. But I do want to thank the committee members, the LMT committee members, the RISE committee members for working so hard. And they're going to continue to work because our goal is to make sure that hopefully in the spring, we can get back to in-person classrooms. So that work is going to continue. And they also have to continue making sure that, for the staff that has to come to work, that it's safe for them to be at work. And so that's the priority for this board and for our district, is making sure our students and staff are safe and healthy And I think that's what we showed today in our vote. I also want to announce that through December, all the board meetings are going to be virtual. So please, we want to hear from you. We want your input. Please email ahead of time to let us know you want to speak. It's very difficult to manage this online and in person. So please, please, please let us know ahead of time that you would like to speak at a board meeting. Because we do want to hear your comments and they are important to hear. And then last, I want to send my regards to the family, Miss Monty, and we'll go ahead and take a moment of silence in her memory right now. Thank you. My condolences to all the alumni from Los Altos High School, all the current students, all her colleagues. I've had an opportunity to meet her several times, and I know she's going to be dearly missed. So, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Clock moves.
Make motion.
Motion by Mr. Kwok, a second by Dr. Chang. Can we have roll call vote, please?
Mr. Medrano, Mr. De La Torre,
Aye.
Mr. Kwok,
Aye.
Dr. Jung,
Aye.
Mr. Duarte.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned.